My parents laughed when I said I'd be rich someday. Now they're asking me for help paying rent, and I sent flowers instead. I'm a 30-year-old guy. But the moment that shaped my entire life happened when I was 17, sitting at our cracked kitchen table. Clutching a notepad full of business ideas, I told my parents, with the kind of excitement only a kid can have, "Someday, I'm going to be rich. I'm going to build something that changes lives." My father nearly choked on his coffee. My mother laughed so hard she had to wipe tears from her eyes. And my sister, Chloe, always the golden child, rolled her eyes and said, "You can't even fix the Wi-Fi, genius." The laughter hit me harder than any slap could have. My father leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Son, the world doesn't care about your dreams. You'll end up like me working a job you hate, but at least it pays the bills." I wanted to scream, to tell him he was wrong, that I was going to prove it. Instead, I just nodded, biting down the hurt until it tasted like metal. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, their laughter echoing in my head. Every cruel word settled into my bones like a promise I had to break. I wasn't angry, not yet, but something inside me hardened. I started researching online courses, business models, coding tutorials. My world shrank to a glowing screen in a dark room. I'd hear Chloe's voice in the next room, bragging about her grades. My mom praising her for being the one who'll make this family proud. I turned up my cheap headphones to drown them out. That's when I started writing my mantra on sticky notes and plastering them on the wall. One day, they'll wish they'd believed in me. When I turned 18, I packed everything I owned into 2 suitcases and left home before sunrise. There was no dramatic goodbye, just a note on the kitchen counter that said, "I'll make it on my own." The bus ride to the city felt like stepping into another world. I remember watching the landscape blur past the window. My reflection staring back, tired, scared, but free. I enrolled in a local community college for computer science and took every part-time job I could find. I stocked shelves at a grocery store from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., attended classes during the day, and cleaned office floors at night. Some nights, I'd fall asleep in my shoes, the smell of disinfectant clinging to my clothes. My apartment was barely a studio peeling paint, flickering lights, and a heater that only worked when it wanted to. But it was mine, and that meant something. My parents called maybe once every few months. Those calls always started the same way. "Your sister's doing great. She just got an internship at a top firm." Then came the passive-aggressive questions. "Are you still playing with computers? When will you get a real job?" I'd swallow the anger, forcing out polite answers while staring at the cracked wall beside my bed. The calls always ended with me staring at my phone, wondering why I even picked up. Nights were the hardest. I'd sit in front of my old laptop, the screen light casting a blue glow across the empty room. I'd code until my eyes burned, fingers trembling from caffeine and exhaustion. Every rejection email from investors became a trophy, a reminder that someone noticed me. Even if it was to say no, each line of code felt like a brick in a house I was building alone. And every time I felt like quitting, I'd hear my father's voice in my head, "You'll end up like me." That voice became fuel, because I wasn't going to end up like him. I was going to become everything he said I couldn't. By the time I hit 21, exhaustion had become my normal. I'd been rejected by dozens of companies and laughed out of every startup forum I posted on. Still, I refused to quit. I spent my nights in that dim one-window apartment surrounded by empty coffee cups and scribbled notes on the wall, each one a fragment of an idea. One night, half delirious from lack of sleep, I stared at my overdue bills and muttered, "There has to be a better way for small businesses to manage all this." That's when it hit MIA's software tool that could automate invoices, track payments, and cut admin time in half. It felt like lightning struck my brain. I sketched the idea on the back of a grocery receipt, coding until the sun bled through the blinds. Days blurred into nights, and my body ran on caffeine and adrenaline. When I finally had a prototype, I pitched it online, every forum, every tech group, anyone who'd listen. Most ignored me. Some laughed, but one message stood out. A mentor from a local tech incubator. His name was Alan. Alan met me in a rundown cafe on a rainy Tuesday. He wore a worn-out hoodie and listened quietly as I explained my idea. When I finished, he smiled slightly and said, "You've got something here. Not perfect, but it's real. Keep building." That single line hit deeper than years of my parents' words combined. For the first time, someone believed in me, not out of obligation, but out of recognition. Alan helped me refine the product, introduced me to other developers, and guided me through early funding applications. It wasn't glamorous half, the meetings were in cramped co-working spaces, but for the first time, I felt momentum. My parents still hadn't called, and that silence stopped hurting, because I finally understood something they never did. Validation doesn't come from family approval. It comes from creating something that proves you were right all along. And I was just getting started. Success didn't happen overnight, but when it finally came, it felt surreal. One morning, I woke up to hundreds of notifications on my phone emails, social media mentions, and new signs. Someone on Reddit had posted about my app under a thread titled, "This guy built something every small business owner needs." Overnight, downloads exploded. My servers crashed twice, and I sat there laughing through tears, typing lines of code at 3 a.m. to keep it alive. A week later, small businesses started sending me thank you messages. "You've saved me hours every week," one wrote. Another said, "You made my life easier and I don't even understand tech." For once, my work meant something real. I wasn't just coding for survival anymore. I was building something people actually valued. I moved from my tiny apartment into a modest one-bedroom place with actual sunlight. When I turned the key that first night, I whispered to myself, "You did it." I posted a picture online, small celebration. Nothing flashy, just a desk set up with the caption, "Hard work pays off." Within hours, old classmates congratulated me. Mentors reached out. Even strangers shared my story. But not a word from my family, not a text, not a call. Chloe posted a photo the next day, smiling at some fancy dinner, captioned, "Some people chase dreams. Others live in reality." I knew it was about me. And even though I had money now, even though people finally saw my worth, that post stung more than I'd like to admit. I poured myself back into work, upgrading the app, hiring a small team, and planning the next stage. The silence from my parents became less painful, but it never stopped echoing, because success means nothing when the people you love pretend it doesn't exist. It had been almost 4 years since I'd spoken to my parents when my phone lit up one evening with a familiar number. For a second, I thought it was a mistake. My mom's name on the screen looked foreign-like, a relic from another life. I hesitated, then answered. Her voice was calm at first, almost cheerful. "Hey, honey, it's been a while, hasn't it?" I felt my chest tighten. "Yeah, a long while." There was a pause, then she sighed dramatically. "Listen, we've been having a tough time. Your dad's hours got cut, and, well, things are hard. You've done so well for yourself, and we're so proud of you." Her tone wobbled on that last line, like she wasn't used to saying it. Before I could respond, she added, "We were hoping you might be able to help us out just until things get better." The words hit like a slap. Proud of me. I thought they hadn't even congratulated me when my company hit its first million in revenue. But now they were proud because they needed something. I kept my voice steady. "What exactly do you need?" "Oh, just a bit of help with rent," she said casually, as if asking me to pick up milk. "Your sister's been going through her own struggles too, poor thing. We're all just trying to survive." There it was, the family hierarchy again. Chloe, the golden child, somehow always deserved sympathy. I was just the ATM with Wi-Fi access. I told her I'd think about it and hung up before my voice cracked. I sat there in silence, my phone screen still glowing. The same people who'd laughed at my dreams now wanted a handout. And somehow, I wasn't angry, just empty, because deep down, I already knew this wasn't about love. It was about convenience. A week later, I drove back to my hometown for the first time in almost 5 years. The highway felt both familiar and foreign, like an old scar I couldn't stop tracing. As I pulled into my parents' driveway, the house looked smaller, crumbling paint, wilted flowers, and the same dented mailbox I'd kicked as a teenager. My chest tightened. I wasn't ready for this, but I needed to see it with my own eyes. My mom opened the door wearing her usual polite smile, but her eyes scanned me like she was trying to measure how much I'd changed. "You've filled out," she said instead of hello. My dad appeared behind her, still holding his newspaper, like time hadn't moved. "So," he said with a half grin, "you finally got yourself a real job, huh?" I forced a smile. Something like that. We sat in the same living room I grew up in, surrounded by peeling wallpaper and the faint smell of fried onions. My mom started talking about bills, taxes, and how family helps family. My dad just kept grumbling about how hard it is for a man my age to find decent work. Then Chloe walked in, perfectly dressed as always, pretending to be humble. "Wow," she said, sitting across from me. "You're doing well for yourself, huh? Good for you." Her tone dripped with sugar and venom. Every word brought back the same sting from years ago, the laughter, the doubt, the subtle cruelty wrapped in smiles. I realized they hadn't changed. They didn't want to reconnect. They wanted a lifeline. As I left that day, my mom called out, "Don't forget what family's for." I paused at the door, forcing back every bitter reply that burned my throat. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I won't." Driving away, I caught a glimpse of the house in the rearview mirror, shrinking, fading, just like the illusion that they'd ever see me as anything more than what I could give them. Back in my condo, the silence felt heavier than usual. The city lights flickered through my window, but instead of pride, I felt hollow. I had everything I once dreamed of: the income, the freedom, the recognition, and yet I felt like that 17-year-old kid again, sitting at that dinner table while everyone laughed at him. I poured myself a drink, but it didn't taste like celebration. It tasted like exhaustion. I couldn't stop replaying the visit in my head, my dad's dismissive smirk, my mom's manipulative tone, Chloe's condescension. It wasn't about money. It was about control. They still wanted me to feel small, no matter how much I'd grown, and for the first time, I felt the weight of every year I'd spent trying to prove something to people who were never going to care. At around 2 a.m., I broke. I sat on the floor, back against the couch, eyes burning, and whispered to no one, "Why wasn't I ever enough?" My voice cracked, echoing in the empty apartment. I realized I'd built my entire identity around defying them, my success, my work ethic, my obsession with proving them wrong. And now that I'd done it, there was nothing left to fight for. The next day, I skipped meetings and ignored calls from my team. I couldn't focus, couldn't eat. I kept staring at my phone, half expecting another guilt-laced call from my mom. Instead, I called Alan, my mentor. I told him everything: how lost I felt, how broken the victory felt now. He listened quietly before saying, "You can't heal where you were hurt, kid. You left home, but you never stopped living there." That line hit me like a gut punch. He was right. I'd escaped the house, but not the hold they had on me. And until I faced that, I'd never really be free. I just didn't know how to let go yet. Continue with Part 8. You said. Continue Part 8, ChatGPT said. Part 8, the cold request word count, approximately 340, a few months passed. And I tried to bury myself in work again. My company was expanding, my team was thriving, and on the surface, everything looked perfect. But underneath it all, something in me had shifted. I didn't chase growth with the same hunger anymore. It all felt muted. The silence from my parents had returned, and honestly, I thought that chapter was finally closed. Then one afternoon, as I wrapped up a meeting, my phone buzzed with a message from my mom. "Call me. It's urgent." My stomach dropped. I hesitated before dialing, half expecting bad news. When she answered, her tone was anything but fragile. It was transactional. "We're short on rent this month," she said flatly, like she was reading a grocery list. "Your father's unemployment ran out, and Chloe's still struggling. We really need you to step in." There it was again. No apology, no warmth, just expectation. I stayed silent for a few seconds, staring at the skyline through my office window. "You know," I said carefully, "you haven't asked how I'm doing in—" "What? A year?" She sighed impatiently. "We know you're fine. You're doing great. You don't need emotional check-ins like we do, sweetheart. We're family. We help each other." That line, "we're family," felt like poison. It was the same justification they'd used my entire life to excuse neglect, manipulation, and favoritism. My jaw clenched. "Family goes both ways, Mom," I said quietly. "Well," she snapped back, "if you're going to hold grudges, maybe success really has changed you." I felt the anger bubbling, but I forced my voice calm. "You'll have what you need soon." "Thank you, honey," she said sweetly, already believing she'd won. I hung up before she could say another word. My hands were shaking, but my mind was still. For the first time, I knew exactly what I was going to do, and it wasn't what she expected. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my office with the city glowing below me, a cup of untouched coffee growing cold beside the monitor. My mother's words replayed in my head were family. We help each other. But family, to them, had always meant I give and they take. I stared at the framed whiteboard behind my desk where I'd written my first business goals years ago. Every milestone was crossed out now, every dream achieved. Yet the one thing I'd never managed was peace. I thought about sending them the money. It wouldn't make a dent in my account. It'd be easy, but easy wasn't the point. They'd mocked my dreams, dismissed my worth, and only came crawling back when they needed something. Helping them now would be like signing a contract that said, "You can hurt me again." I scrolled through old photos on my phone, screenshots of my first paycheck. The app's launch post, even a blurry photo of me and Alan in front of my startup's logo. Every image was proof of how far I'd come without them. And then I remembered that night at 17, the laughter, the humiliation, the promise I made to myself. One day, they'll wish they'd believed in me. It wasn't revenge I wanted, it was closure. I didn't owe them money. What I owed myself was freedom. Freedom from that invisible leash that had kept me chasing approval for over a decade. So, I opened a new browser tab and searched for a florist near their neighborhood. My hand hovered over the keyboard as I smiled faintly. If they wanted something from me, they were about to get it. Something beautiful, something final. I clicked place order, already knowing what the card would say. The next morning, I awoke before dawn. The city outside was still asleep, but my mind was wide awake, calm, clear, and eerily certain. I brewed coffee and sat in silence, watching the steam rise like ghosts of all the words I'd never said. My laptop screen glowed softly as I pulled up the florist's website I'd found the night before. It was a small shop near my parents' house, the same one. My mom used to order bouquets from on special occasions. I scrolled through the options, my cursor hovering over bright lila, her favorite. I remembered her arranging them on our kitchen table when I was a kid, smiling as she hummed along to old love songs. For a second, I felt something almost like guilt tug at me. But then I remembered her laughter, the years of silence, the hollow pride that only appeared when she needed something. That feeling vanished. I ordered the largest bouquet they offered. The delivery date, today. Attached to the order form was a blank message card. I hesitated for a moment before typing. You laughed when I said I'd make something of myself. I made peace instead. Wishing you all the best, your son. I read the words twice, then hit send. It wasn't revenge. It was closure dressed as kindness, something poetic in its restraint. Hours later, my phone buzzed with a message from the florist. Delivery completed successfully. I imagined her opening the door, seeing the flowers, reading the notan for once. Having nothing left to say, I stared at my phone for a long time, waiting for the guilt to come. But it didn't. Just a strange, quiet peace I'd never known before. I didn't send money. I didn't explain myself. I just sent flowers, and that said everything I needed to say. For days after sending the flowers, my phone stayed quiet. No calls, no texts. No guilt trips disguised as concern. Just silence. It was almost eerie at first, like waiting for thunder after lightning. But the thunder never came. I checked my inbox once, then twice, half expecting a scathing message or a passive-aggressive. Voicemail? Nothing. It was as if the entire family had vanished into thin air. Then, a week later, I got an email. The subject line read, "You've gone too far." It was from Chloe. Her message was short, cold, and sharp enough to cut. "I can't believe you'd humiliate Mom like that," she cried for hours. "You could have just said no. You always were dramatic." I stared at the words, my chest tightening for a moment. But then I noticed something. She didn't ask how I was doing, didn't even pretend to care. The whole thing was about appearances, about control, just like always. I closed the email without replying. Later that night, I sat on my balcony, city lights flickering below, and realized I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't even feel triumphant. I just felt free. For the first time in my life, I didn't owe them an explanation, an apology, or a justification for my choices. They couldn't twist my success into something ugly anymore. In the following weeks, I quietly removed their numbers from my contacts. I archived old photos, blocked Chloe's social media. and deleted every voicemail that began with "We're family." Each click felt lighter, cleaner, like dusting off the last pieces of a past I'd outgrown. I didn't send flowers for revenge. I sent them to bury the version of me that still needed their approval. And in that silence that followed, I finally found peace. It's been 2 years since that day, and I can say this with a clarity I never had before. Freedom isn't about cutting people off. It's about cutting the power they have over your peace. I used to think success was the only way to heal old wounds, that proving them wrong would finally make the pain stop. But the truth is, no amount of money or achievement fills the void left by people who never saw your worth. Peace did what wealth couldn't. These days, I wake up before sunrise and sit by the window with a cup of coffee, not because I have to grind, but because I finally want to. My company runs smoothly now, but that's not what defines me anymore. What matters is what I built outside of EATA's small mentorship program for underprivileged teens who remind me of myself. Kids with big dreams, small budgets, and parents who don't believe in them. When I tell them, "You're not crazy for wanting more," I see something shift in their eyes. Hope, the kind I had to create for myself. Sometimes I still get updates about my family through distant relatives. How Chloe's struggling to keep her job. How my parents might move to a smaller place. I don't feel joy or revenge, just distance. Like watching an old movie you've already cried through once. I even sent them a Christmas card last year. No money, no message, just a simple photo of a sunrise. A quiet reminder that I've moved on. I've learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't loud, it's silent, steady, and peaceful. I didn't become rich to prove them wrong anymore. I became whole to prove myself right. They laughed when I said I'd be rich someday. Now, I'm richer than they could ever imagine. Not in money, but in peace.